It all began in the bustling hallways of Maplewood High, a typical suburban high school where every corner was filled with gossip, laughter, and the subtle undercurrents of teenage drama. I was a junior, navigating the chaos of classes, sports, and the looming pressure of college applications. In this whirlwind, I found Sarah, a girl whose smile could brighten even the dreariest days. Sarah was charismatic and vivacious. She had long, wavy brown hair that cascaded down her shoulders and sparkling green eyes that seemed to dance with mischief. She was the girl every guy wanted to date, and I was the lucky one who won her heart. We bonded over shared classes, late-night study sessions, and our mutual love for classic rock music. We spent weekends at my place, listening to records and dreaming about our futures. The more I got to know her, the deeper I fell. Our relationship felt like a fairy tale, a blissful escape from the pressures of school and impending adulthood. We'd spend hours lying on the hood of my car, staring at the stars, talking about everything from our favorite bands to our deepest fears. I remember one summer evening when we sat on a blanket in the park, sharing a slice of pizza and joking about the absurdities of life. It felt perfect. I couldn't imagine a future without her. As the months rolled on, we celebrated small milestones, anniversaries, birthdays, and graduation. It felt like we were on the cusp of something beautiful, planning our escape to college and the adventures that awaited us. But little did I know, the foundation of our relationship was built on cracks that would soon shatter my world. As the school year progressed, I began to notice subtle changes in Sarah. She seemed more preoccupied and often distracted during our conversations. One afternoon, I caught her glancing at her phone while I was talking about my basketball game. At first, I shrugged it off as typical teenage behavior. Everyone was glued to their screens these days. But when Sarah started spending more time after school in the English teacher's classroom, Mr. Thompson, a well-respected but young teacher who was in his late 20s, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. He had a laid-back style that students appreciated, and I could see how Sarah might find him appealing. I dismissed my growing concerns, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. After all, she was dedicated to her studies, right? The real trouble began when I overheard a conversation between Jake, my best friend, and another classmate in the cafeteria. "Did you see Sarah and Mr. Thompson after class? They were laughing like they were old pals," Jake said. My heart sank at the thought of Sarah being too friendly with him, but I tried to shake it off, attributing it to my jealousy. Days turned into weeks, and I became increasingly aware of Sarah's changing behavior. She started dressing differently, more trendy and daring. She'd come home late from school, claiming she was studying with friends, but I noticed the glances she exchanged with Mr. Thompson in the hallways. Each passing day felt like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation, and I braced myself for the fallout. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday evening, and I had planned a surprise dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant to celebrate our one-year anniversary. I arrived early, heart racing with excitement, flowers in hand, but Sarah was late, a worrying first for her. After waiting for half an hour, I received a text. "Sorry, I'm with some friends. Can we reschedule?" My gut twisted as I imagined her out with Jake and the others. When she finally arrived, her cheeks were flushed, and she was wearing a tight dress that I didn't remember her mentioning. The way she avoided my gaze sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "Everything okay?" I asked, attempting to sound casual, but my voice cracked with uncertainty. "Yeah, just got caught up with some stuff," she replied, avoiding eye contact as she toyed with the napkin on her lap. As the evening progressed, the tension between us was palpable. I tried to dismiss my doubts and focus on the night, but my mind kept racing. After dinner, as we walked through the park, I felt compelled to confront her. "Sarah, is there something you're not telling me?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with anxiety. Her silence spoke volumes. Is it Mr. Thompson? I pressed, watching her face drain of color. I I don't know what you mean, she stammered. Don't lie to me. I've heard the rumors, and I've seen the way you act around him. The truth hung in the air like a thick fog. Finally, she broke down, her defenses crumbling. I messed up. He's been supportive, and I thought it was just harmless flirting. I never meant for it to go this far. Her admission felt like a knife twisting in my gut. How could you do this to us? I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty park. We were supposed to be in this together. I'm so sorry, she cried. I thought I was losing you, and he made me feel special. I never intended for it to turn physical. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I couldn't fathom how someone I trusted could do this. I walked away, leaving her in tears, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I drove home in silence, replaying every moment, every conversation, trying to piece together how it had come to this. News spread through the school like wildfire. Mr. Thompson was put on leave, and Sarah became the subject of whispers and side glances. I couldn't escape the judgment and pity from my classmates. I felt like a pariah, the guy whose girlfriend had cheated on him with a teacher. While Sarah reached out trying to apologize, I found solace in friends who truly cared about me, like Jake, who stood by me through it all. You deserve better, man. Don't let her drag you down, he said, encouraging me to focus on my future. In the following weeks, I threw myself into basketball and my studies. I decided to apply to colleges out of state, hoping to escape the painful memories associated with Maplewood. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughter, her warmth, and the moments we shared. The fallout from the affair rippled through the school, affecting more than just Sarah and me. Mr. Thompson's career was in jeopardy, and the faculty was in turmoil over how to handle the situation. I heard whispers of a possible scandal, and my heart ached for the teacher who had once inspired so many of us. It felt surreal that someone I had respected and looked up to was now caught in a web of deceit. As the school year dragged on, I found it increasingly difficult to be in the same environment that had once felt so comforting. I avoided the cafeteria, the hallways, and especially the English classroom where Sarah had spent so much time. Instead, I found refuge in the gym, losing myself in basketball practice, working on my shots, and running drills. The court became my sanctuary. It was during one of those practices that I had a turning point. I was working on my free throws when I noticed Mia, a girl from the year below me, sitting on the bleachers. She was watching with an amused smile, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of interest. Mia was the complete opposite of Sarah, more grounded, funny, and incredibly supportive. She had an infectious laugh that broke through my defenses, and for the first time since the breakup, I felt a hint of joy. Mia and I started talking more after practice, and she quickly became a trusted friend. She encouraged me to focus on my future, reminding me that I was more than just a guy whose girlfriend had cheated on him. Slowly, I began to open up to her about my feelings, and she listened without judgment, offering her support and friendship. Graduation was bittersweet. I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, but the joy of the moment was overshadowed by the betrayal. As I turned to look for Sarah in the crowd, I realized I had to let her go. She hadn't come to support me, which was a wake-up call. If she couldn't be there for me during such a pivotal moment, then she truly didn't deserve a place in my life. Choosing to attend college in a city miles away from home felt like a breath of fresh air. I was determined to start anew, leaving the memories of Maplewood behind. The first few weeks were challenging, but I surrounded myself with new friends who didn't know my past. I focused on my studies and played basketball, slowly reclaiming my confidence and sense of self-worth. It wasn't long before Mia and I started dating. The transition from friends to partners felt natural, like a missing piece of a puzzle had finally found its place. She was everything I had been looking for, genuine, caring, and ready to stand by my side through thick and thin. With her support, I learned to trust again, and that was a powerful moment of growth. Months later, I received a text from Sarah. "I'm so sorry for everything. I hope you're doing well." I stared at the screen, emotions flooding back. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of closure. I took a moment to process my feelings before typing out a response. "Thanks, I'm doing okay," I replied, choosing not to dwell on the past. It was time to move forward, and I could feel that weight lifting off my shoulders. In the end, that heartbreak became a pivotal moment in my life. It taught me about trust, resilience, and the importance of open communication. I emerged stronger, more self-aware, and ready to embrace new adventures. High school was a painful chapter, but it was just that, a chapter. My story continued, filled with new relationships and opportunities. I learned to cherish the lessons, but also learned to let go. It was time to turn the page and write my next chapter. As I settled into college life, I found myself reflecting on the past more frequently. There were times I'd hear a song that reminded me of Sarah, or I'd pass a familiar diner we used to visit, and those memories would hit hard. But instead of dwelling on the pain, I chose to celebrate the lessons I'd learned. I joined a campus club focused on mental health awareness, wanting to help others who might be struggling with their own heartbreaks. I shared my story during meetings, discussing the importance of communication and honesty in relationships. It was cathartic to transform my pain into something positive, helping others find their way through the murky waters of relationships. Mia became my rock. We spent weekends exploring the city, trying out new restaurants, and going to concerts. With her by my side, I felt like I could conquer anything. Our connection deepened, built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect that I hadn't thought possible after my experience with Sarah. As the years passed, I graduated college, and the future unfolded before me. I landed a great job and started planning for a life that I had only dreamed of before. My relationship with Mia grew stronger, and I began to see a future with her that felt bright and exciting. On the anniversary of our graduation from high school, I found myself in a reflective mood. I had come so far from that heart-wrenching night when Sarah had confessed. I had transformed my pain into strength and grown into a person I was proud of. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Jake. "Hey man, just wanted to thank you for being there during the tough times. I really appreciate it." "Always, dude. You've come a long way. Proud of you," he replied almost immediately. I smiled, knowing that I had a solid support system behind me. That night, as I lay in bed next to Mia, I felt a sense of peace. I had learned that love can hurt, but also heal. I had learned that life continues despite the heartbreak, and sometimes it leads you to unexpected places filled with joy and new beginnings. With a hopeful heart and the lessons from my past guiding me, I drifted off to sleep, ready to embrace whatever the future had in store. Growing up, I always thought my family was the epitome of normalcy. Dad was a hardworking man, devoted to his job as a mechanic, while Mom was the nurturing figure who made our home warm and inviting. Their love seemed boundless, filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the occasional family trip. I remember weekends spent camping by the lake, evenings of board games, and the smell of Mom's cooking wafting through the house. They were a team, or so I thought. In my eyes, Dad was a superhero. He worked tirelessly at his garage, often coming home with grease-stained hands and a wide smile that made me believe he could fix anything: cars, relationships, even my problems. Mom, with her gentle nature and caring demeanor, balanced Dad's ruggedness with her warmth. They complemented each other, or at least that's how it seemed to me. But as I entered my teenage years, I began to notice cracks in the seemingly perfect facade. Tensions arose during family dinners, where raised voices were often followed by awkward silence. Dad would come home late from work, his mood darkened by the weight of unspoken issues, while Mom often withdrew into herself, lost in thought. I had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface, but I sensed a storm was coming. Little did I know that their relationship was a complex tapestry of hidden resentments and unmet needs. Dad often complained about how hard he had to work to provide for the family, while Mom felt unappreciated, her dreams of being a writer put on the back burner to raise us. I was oblivious to the brewing storm, but I sensed that something was off, like a sour note in a familiar song. The unraveling began with an unexpected phone call. It was a brisk autumn evening when Dad answered the phone, his face slowly transforming from curiosity to confusion. I was upstairs, but the tension in the air was palpable. He paced back and forth, his voice hushed but urgent. When he finally hung up, he slumped into a chair, his expression grave. "What's wrong, Dad?" I ventured, my heart racing. "It's nothing, just work stuff," he replied, but I could see the worry etched on his face. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. In the following weeks, the tension escalated. Dad started spending more time at work, often taking on extra shifts. Mom, on the other hand, became increasingly distant. I caught glimpses of her texting late at night, her face illuminated by the screen, her expression shifting from happiness to guilt. I wanted to confront her, but as a teenager, I felt powerless. What could I say? I was just a kid. I had my suspicions, but I kept them to myself. I didn't want to stir the pot. I was hoping that everything would blow over, that this was just a rough patch. But every day I saw less of my dad's smile and more of my mom's distant gaze. Then came the day that shattered everything. I had come home early from school, and as I entered the living room, I overheard a hushed conversation. Mom was on the phone, and her tone was intimate, almost flirtatious. My heart sank as I strained to listen. "I can't keep doing this," she said softly. "He's starting to notice." I froze, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. She was cheating on Dad. The truth began to unravel in front of me, piece by agonizing piece. Over the next few weeks, I watched as Dad tried to hold the family together, clueless about what was happening right under his nose. It was painful to witness the man I admired so much struggle, to understand why the love of his life was pulling away. One evening, I decided to confront Mom. I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes glazed over as she scrolled through her phone. I gathered all my courage, my hands trembling. "Mom, are you cheating on Dad?" The words burst out before I could think. Her head snapped up, and for a moment, shock flooded her face. "What? No, of course not." "Then why are you always on the phone? Why do you seem so distant?" I pressed, desperation lacing my voice. "Jake, you don't understand," she said, her voice rising in frustration. "It's complicated." "Complicated." "You're hurting Dad," I shouted, my emotions boiling over. She stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. "You have no idea what it's like to be in my shoes. Your father. He doesn't see me anymore. He doesn't understand me." Those words echoed in my mind long after our confrontation. I had never seen my mother so vulnerable, yet so determined to justify her actions. It left a pit in my stomach, but it also fueled my resolve to protect my father from the impending heartbreak. Weeks passed, and the tension in our house grew unbearable. One day, I overheard another phone call, this time more explicit. "I can't wait to see you tonight," Mom cooed into the phone, her tone sultry. My heart raced, and a fire ignited within me. I knew I had to confront her again. That evening I sat Dad down at the kitchen table. He looked weary, lines etched deep into his forehead. "What's wrong, son?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. "Dad, I need to talk to you about Mom," I said, the words heavy in the air. His expression hardened. "What about your mother?" "I think she's cheating on you," I blurted out, the words spilling from my lips before I could reconsider. What? His voice was a mixture of disbelief and anger. What are you talking about? I've heard her on the phone, Dad. I overheard her saying things. Things that no wife should say to someone else, I explained, the lump in my throat growing. He leaned back, processing my words, disbelief clouding his features. Jake, that's a serious accusation. Are you sure? I wouldn't say it if I wasn't, I insisted, my heart racing. You need to confront her. That night, Dad confronted Mom. I hid in my room, anxiety twisting my stomach into knots. The shouting match that followed was deafening. I could hear the pain and betrayal in Dad's voice, the way he demanded answers, the way she tried to justify her actions. Why, Karen? Why would you do this to me? Dad shouted, his voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom replied, desperation leaking through her words. I felt so alone for so long. Alone. You made a choice. You betrayed our family. Dad's anger echoed through the house, each word like a dagger. I couldn't take it any more. I burst into the living room, unable to stand by any longer. Mom, stop. Just stop. You're tearing our family apart. The look on Mom's face was one of shock and guilt. Dad's eyes darted between us, confusion clouding his expression. Jake, this isn't your fight, Mom said softly, but I shook my head. No, it is. We're supposed to be a family, but you're acting like you don't care. The confrontation continued until it reached a boiling point. Mom broke down, tears streaming down her face. I made a mistake. I thought I could find happiness again. You thought cheating would make you happy? Dad countered, his voice low and full of hurt. The aftermath of that night was devastating. Mom moved out temporarily, and Dad was left to pick up the pieces. The pain was palpable, an unbearable weight that settled over our home. Dad's laughter was replaced by silence, and the warmth of our house felt cold and empty. I tried to comfort him, but he often retreated into his thoughts, lost in a sea of hurt and betrayal. I saw him struggle with feelings of inadequacy, questioning his worth as a husband and father. I couldn't bear to see him like this, but I felt helpless. Days turned into weeks, and Mom finally returned, but everything had changed. The love they once shared was buried beneath layers of resentment and distrust. They sat together in awkward silence, both of them wearing masks of sorrow and regret. Can we talk? Mom asked one night, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad nodded, but his eyes were hard. Talk about what? How you broke this family apart. Please, just let me explain, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I listened from the hallway, the tension thickening the air. It was painful to hear the couple that had once been so in sync struggle to communicate. Mom tried to express her feelings, but Dad's walls were high, and it felt like they were speaking different languages. Eventually, they agreed to seek counseling. I watched as they sat across from a therapist, trying to navigate the minefield of emotions between them. It was a long and arduous process, filled with tears, anger, and moments of clarity. Slowly, they began to peel back the layers of pain, confronting the issues that had led Mom astray. Therapy sessions became a weekly ritual. They shared their grievances, laying bare their vulnerabilities. For the first time, I saw Dad express his hurt openly, and it was cathartic for him. Mom, in turn, showed remorse, acknowledging the pain she had caused. As the months passed, healing began, though it was a fragile and often messy process. Trust was not something that could be rebuilt overnight. It took time, patience, and relentless effort from both of them. They began to appreciate each other's perspectives, learning to communicate without accusations. Maybe we were both to blame, Mom admitted one evening. I neglected my needs, and you didn't see my struggles. Dad nodded, his expression softening. I just thought if I worked harder, everything would be fine. I didn't realize how far we had drifted apart. They learned to spend quality time together, rediscovering the joys of each other's company. They started going for walks, cooking together, and even finding time for date nights. I watched as their connection slowly reignited, the flicker of love reigniting amidst the ashes of betrayal. There were setbacks, of course, moments where anger and hurt threatened to surface again. But with each challenge, they grew stronger, building a foundation based on honesty and understanding. Dad began volunteering at a local community center, where he met others who had faced similar struggles. His pain became a source of strength, allowing him to empathize with those in distress. Mom, too, found her passion for writing again, pouring her heart into articles about relationships and healing. Years later, as I reflect on that tumultuous period in our lives, I realize it forged a stronger bond between us. My parents had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, learning to appreciate each other in ways they hadn't before. They recognized that love isn't just about the good times, but also about navigating the dark waters together. Mom often shared her story with others, using her experiences as a cautionary tale about the importance of communication and the consequences of neglecting one's partner. "I lost my way, but I found my way back," she would say, her voice filled with conviction. Dad found solace in helping others, sharing his experiences and offering support to those dealing with their own heartaches. He transformed his pain into a source of strength, helping others navigate their struggles. As I reflect on the journey my family has taken, I am filled with gratitude. The pain of betrayal taught us invaluable lessons about love, trust, and forgiveness. While the scars of the past remain, they serve as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of fighting for the ones we love. And as I watched my parents grow and heal, I realized that true love is forged in the fires of adversity, strengthened by honesty and understanding. The story of betrayal became a tale of redemption, one that continues to inspire me to this day. Life was simple in our suburban neighborhood. I remember the first time I laid eyes on Laura, my wife. It was at a small coffee shop where I'd stopped by for a quick caffeine fix before heading to work. She was sitting alone, her nose buried in a book, an air of tranquility surrounding her. We struck up a conversation that day, her laughter brightening the cafe like a sunbeam piercing through the clouds. I felt an instant connection, a spark that ignited a romance built on shared dreams and mutual support. We married 3 years later, believing we had the world figured out. We set up a cozy home filled with laughter, love, and the chaos of life. Laura had always been my anchor, the one who kept me grounded. She was passionate, creative, and had an infectious enthusiasm for life. I loved her for it. Together, we built a life filled with small adventures, road trips, game nights, and dinners with friends. We were living the dream, or so I thought. But beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life, there were tensions. Laura was a freelance graphic designer, working from home while I clocked in long hours at the office. The dynamics of our relationship began to shift. The lines of communication blurred, and the once vibrant connection between us began to fray. I was so focused on my job, chasing promotions and bonuses, that I overlooked the subtle signs that something was amiss. There were whispers of discontent in our home, late nights spent in silence, while Laura worked on projects that drained her creatively. She had always been my biggest supporter, but I could sense her frustration. I remember her saying once, "I just feel so stuck, like I'm not moving forward." I brushed it off, thinking it was just a phase. It was on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday, when the cracks in our marriage began to deepen. A leaky faucet in the kitchen had become a persistent annoyance, and I finally decided it was time to call in a professional. I arranged for a plumber to come by after work. Laura was home that day, and I assumed it would be a quick fix. Little did I know, it would lead to a series of events that would turn my life upside down. When I returned home that evening, I noticed something different. Laura seemed distracted, her gaze lingering on her phone as she scrolled mindlessly. I chalked it up to a long day and asked her about the plumber. "Oh, he was nice," she replied, her tone a bit too casual. I shrugged it off, focusing on the dinner I had prepared, eager to talk about my day. But as the days went by, the mood shifted in our house. Laura became increasingly distant, lost in her thoughts. I noticed her spending more time on her phone, her smile becoming a rare occurrence. When I asked if everything was okay, she would wave me off, insisting she was just busy with work. I wanted to believe her, but an unsettling feeling gnawed at me. A couple of weeks later, the plumber returned to fix another issue in the house. A clogged drain this time. I had taken the day off, wanting to spend time with Laura and perhaps reignite the spark we once had. As I sat in the living room, I overheard them chatting in the kitchen. Their voices were light, laughter spilling out into the hallway. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease creeping up my spine. I casually walked into the kitchen, feigning nonchalance, but the moment I stepped in, I caught a glimpse of something that sent a chill down my spine. Laura was leaning against the counter, her laughter ringing in the air, her gaze fixed on the plumber as he demonstrated something with his tools. I forced a smile, but inside, a storm was brewing. After the plumber left, I confronted Laura about their banter. "You seemed really friendly with him," I said, trying to keep my tone light. She brushed it off, her laughter fading. "He's just a nice guy, okay? He's good at his job. What do you want me to do? Be rude?" Her defensiveness surprised me, but I let it go, convincing myself that I was overreacting. A few more weeks passed, and the unease in our home grew palpable. Laura began spending more time away from home, claiming she was working on client projects at coffee shops. I wanted to trust her, but my instincts screamed that something was wrong. I felt like a detective, piecing together clues in a mystery I didn't want to solve. One evening, I decided to surprise her with a nice dinner. I prepared her favorite meal and set the table, ready to create a moment we could cherish. But when she walked through the door, I could tell something was off. Her eyes were bright, but there was a flicker of something else. Guilt, perhaps. "Hey, I made your favorite," I said, trying to hide my growing concern. "Oh, that's sweet," she replied, but her enthusiasm felt forced. After dinner, she excused herself to take a phone call in another room. I tried to ignore the nagging suspicion that gnawed at me, but I couldn't help but listen. I heard her voice, low and conspiratorial. "I can't wait to see you again," she said, her tone dripping with intimacy. My heart sank. I tried to convince myself that maybe she was talking to a friend, but deep down, I knew. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in our house became suffocating. The laughter that once echoed through our walls was replaced by silence. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. I began to investigate, checking her social media, looking for signs of the truth. It was a slippery slope, but I needed to know. I found nothing at first, just innocuous posts about work and friends. But then a photo appeared, a picture of Laura with the plumber, his arm casually slung around her shoulder, both of them grinning like they were the only two people in the world. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I confronted her that night, my emotions boiling over. "Who the hell is this guy?" I demanded, shoving the phone in her face. Her expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw the fear in her eyes. "It's not what you think," she protested, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "Then what is it, because it looks pretty damn clear to me?" I shouted, feeling the anger and betrayal surge within me. Laura broke down, her tears flowing freely. "It's complicated," she sobbed, her body shaking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I felt so lonely." "Lonely? You've been cheating on me with a plumber. How is that even possible?" I was furious, my heart racing as I processed the whirlwind of emotions. "I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. He listened to me, made me feel seen. You were so busy with work, and I felt like I was drowning, she explained, her voice filled with desperation. Drowning? So you decided to swim in someone else's bed? I shot back, my anger morphing into disbelief. We argued late into the night, each accusation and defense tearing at the fabric of our relationship. I felt betrayed, angry, and heartbroken. The woman I loved had chosen another man over me, a man who fixed pipes instead of nurturing our love. I never expected our story to end like this. In the days that followed, I was left to pick up the pieces. I couldn't bear to look at her without feeling a mix of anger and sadness. The love we had built felt like a lie. I moved into the guest room, the distance between us growing as our once shared life crumbled around us. I tried to work through my feelings, spending time with friends who offered support, but nothing could shake the feeling of betrayal. Laura attempted to apologize, to rebuild the trust that had shattered between us, but it was like trying to fix a broken vase. No matter how carefully you glue it back together, the cracks remain. I saw her trying, but the anger within me felt insurmountable. Each time she reached out, I recoiled, remembering the betrayal. The house that once felt like home was now a battlefield. We attended couples counseling, hoping to salvage what was left of our marriage, but the process was painful. I struggled to understand how someone I trusted could hurt me so deeply. The therapist guided us through the layers of pain, but every session felt like a reminder of what we had lost. Laura shared her feelings of inadequacy, her struggles with loneliness, and how she had turned to the plumber for comfort. I listened, my heart heavy with the knowledge that she had found solace in another man's arms. It was hard to reconcile the woman I loved with the one who betrayed me. As the weeks turned into months, I slowly began to see the possibility of healing. Laura showed genuine remorse, making efforts to prove her commitment to our marriage. She began attending writing workshops and reconnecting with her passions, working to find herself outside of our relationship. I admired her strength, but the scars of betrayal lingered. Maybe we both need to find ourselves again, I suggested one evening. It's not just about you, it's about us. I know, I'll do whatever it takes, she promised, her voice filled with determination. Slowly, we began to rebuild our lives. I focused on my career and started working out again, rediscovering the joy of pushing myself physically. I realized I had lost a part of myself in the chaos of our relationship, and it felt liberating to reclaim it. Laura started volunteering at a local shelter, pouring her energy into helping others, and I could see her spirit reigniting. Over time, we found our way back to each other, but it wasn't easy. Trust was a delicate thing, and we learned to communicate better, to be open about our needs. Laura worked to prove her commitment, and I began to let my guard down. One night, we sat on the couch, a comfortable silence wrapping around us. I looked over at her, her head resting on my shoulder, and I felt a flicker of hope. You know, I never thought we'd make it through this, I admitted. Neither did I, she replied, her voice soft. But I'm willing to fight for us. I hope you are too. I am. I think we can turn this around, I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. As the months turned into years, we learned to appreciate the lessons we had learned from the darkness. Our relationship was no longer just about love. It was about resilience, trust, and forgiveness. The scars of betrayal remained, but they served as reminders of the strength we found in our vulnerability. Laura eventually became a successful designer, and I grew in my career, but more importantly, we learned to lean on each other, forging a bond that felt unbreakable. Our love story wasn't the fairy tale I had once imagined, but it became a journey of rediscovery, proving that even in the face of betrayal, healing and love can flourish. Years later, as I reflect on that painful chapter, I see it as a turning point in our lives. The experience taught us both about the fragility of trust and the importance of communication in relationships. We became advocates for couples who faced challenges, sharing our story to help others navigate their struggles. Laura often writes about her journey, exploring the depths of betrayal and the path to redemption. She emphasizes the significance of vulnerability and the strength found in honesty. I, too, share my experiences, hoping to inspire others who find themselves in similar situations. Our marriage, once on the brink of collapse, blossomed into a partnership that thrived on honesty, understanding, and mutual respect. The plumber became a footnote in our story, a catalyst for change that ultimately led us back to each other. As I sit here, looking at the life we've built together, I am grateful for the lessons learned and the love that remains. The journey wasn't easy, but it taught us the value of fighting for what truly matters, our love, and the life we chose to build together.